I never thought a wedding invitation could tear a family apart. The crisp, white envelope arrived on a rainy Tuesday morning, innocent in appearance, but its contents set everything in motion. As I opened it, I had no idea it would lead to one of the most painful confrontations of my life. I remember the soft hum of the kettle in the kitchen, the scent of rain clinging to the curtains, and then her voice. "Don't even think about coming to the wedding," my mother snapped. Her words were sharp, laced with something far deeper than anger. I turned to her, confused, trying to find meaning in her eyes. But all I saw was disappointment and something else. Fear. She stood there like a gatekeeper to a truth I hadn't yet uncovered. And before we continue, leave a comment and let us know where you're watching from. Give this video a like, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It helps our small project grow. Enjoy listening, and let's begin. As I stood there, holding that invitation like it was a ticking time bomb, I had no idea how deeply it would shake everything I thought I knew about my family, love, and loyalty. That was just the beginning. Because by the time the wedding arrived, I had discovered a secret buried so deep, it had the power to unravel every bond I ever trusted. The days leading up to the wedding were tense. Every corner of our home seemed to hold its breath. My mother avoided eye contact with me, speaking in short, clipped sentences, as if her words might spill something she wasn't ready to reveal. My father, always a quiet man, buried himself in his work even more than usual, and my younger brother seemed completely oblivious to the tension simmering beneath the surface. I kept wondering what I had done wrong. Why would my own mother forbid me from attending my cousin's wedding, especially when we had grown up like siblings? We'd shared birthdays, school projects, and even heartbreaks. Yet now I wasn't welcome? I sat alone in my room one night, the soft glow of my desk lamp casting long shadows across the walls. I took out the invitation again and reread every word, hoping some hidden message would appear, something that would explain this irrational hostility. But it was just a beautifully printed card with golden lettering inviting me to celebrate the union of two people I cared deeply about. That's when I decided I needed answers. I asked my mother again the next morning, my voice steady but quiet. "Why can't I go? Just tell me the truth." She paused at the kitchen sink, her hands frozen under running water. "Because some things," she said, her voice trembling, "are better left in the past, and you don't need to see what's about to unfold." Her answer only deepened my confusion. What past? Whose past? And why was it now resurfacing? Determined, I turned to my cousin, the bride-to-be. I messaged her late that night, and to my surprise, she responded almost immediately. Her reply wasn't what I expected. "I know what she told you, and I'm so sorry, but if you show up, it might ruin everything." I stared at the screen, rereading her message until my eyes blurred. Something was very wrong, and everyone seemed to know the story except me. As the days passed, the house became heavier with unspoken tension. I started picking up clues, old photos removed from walls, hushed conversations between my parents late at night, and the way my mother flinched when I mentioned certain names. I had grown up believing our family was imperfect but stable, loving though not expressive. But now I was beginning to sense fractures I had never seen before, cracks in the stories I had been told and in the people I thought I knew. On the eve of the wedding, my mother came into my room. She looked tired, older somehow, like the weight of memory had finally settled onto her shoulders. She sat beside me, and for a moment I thought she might finally tell me everything. Instead, she placed her hand on mine and said, "Promise me you'll stay home tomorrow." But I couldn't, because I had already decided I needed to be there. Whatever secrets they were hiding, I would uncover them myself. The morning of the wedding arrived with a strange calmness in the air, almost like the world itself was holding its breath. The sun poured golden light through my window, casting a warm glow that felt oddly detached from the unease brewing in my chest. My heart raced as I dressed quietly, choosing a simple blue dress, nothing flashy, but enough to blend in. I didn't want attention, I wanted answers. As I stepped outside, my phone buzzed. A message from my cousin again. Please don't come. This day isn't about the past. But for me, it was. I arrived at the venue just as guests were beginning to settle. It was a charming seaside location, elegant but intimate, with white chairs lined up on the grass, soft petals scattered along the aisle. The ocean whispered in the distance, a constant, calming hush against the tension in my chest. I kept to the back, head low, trying not to attract attention. Everything looked perfect, until I saw him. Standing by the groom, older now but unmistakable, was a man I hadn't seen in over a decade. My pulse faltered. I knew that face. He wasn't family. He wasn't a friend. He was my mother's past. The man she cried over one night when she thought I was asleep. The name she whispered during an argument with my father years ago. A man whose presence now made every strange moment over the past week make sense. I watched my mother across the garden, her expression frozen as she too saw him. For a moment, she looked like she might collapse. My father turned to her, touching her elbow gently, but she brushed him off. That was the moment I knew. Whatever this was, it ran deeper than I'd imagined. During the ceremony, I tried to focus on the vows, the music, the smiles. But my mind kept flashing back to nights as a child, hearing muffled arguments, catching glimpses of old photographs hidden in drawers, my mother sitting in silence for hours on the porch. And now, he was here. Not a ghost, not a memory, but real, alive, smiling. Why? After the ceremony, I lingered near the edge of the reception, scanning the crowd. Eventually, I found a quiet moment and approached my cousin. She looked heartbroken to see me. You shouldn't have come. I had to. Just tell me the truth. Who is he? Her face went pale. She pulled me aside, behind the flower arch. He's your mother's first love. They were engaged, before your dad. He disappeared. She thought he was dead. He's the groom's father. I stood there, stunned. Wait, so the groom is? My half-brother, she whispered. My mom never told me until recently. She begged me not to invite him, but my dad insisted. My breath caught. This wasn't just a story of love lost. It was a story of lives tangled in secrecy, decisions made in pain, and now, revealed at a wedding where truth had no invitation. I barely slept that night. My thoughts were like a constant hum, buzzing, colliding, spinning into a frenzy I couldn't escape. The house was eerily quiet. I woke up early, staring at the ceiling, feeling as though the entire universe was shifting beneath me. The conversation with David, my mother's pain, and the heavy burden of everything unsaid. It was too much for one person to carry. When I stumbled into the kitchen, I was surprised to see my mother already awake, sitting by the window with a cup of coffee. Her posture was rigid, and her face was drawn, as if she hadn't rested at all. I wanted to say something comforting, but the words felt too small for the gravity of the situation. Instead, I just sat across from her and waited for her to speak. Last night, she began, her voice hoarse, was the hardest night of my life. I didn't respond, waiting for her to continue. I thought I'd buried all of this, all of him, deep down. And then, just like that, he's back, and the past comes flooding back. It's like a storm that you can never outrun. Her hands trembled as she took a sip of her coffee. I could see the pain in her eyes, the weariness of a woman who had spent so long carrying this weight on her own. But there was something more, something I couldn't put into words. He was never supposed to come back, you know, she said, her gaze lost somewhere in the distance. When he left, I thought that was it. I built a life without him. I had you, and I focused on giving you the best I could. But now... She stopped herself, shaking her head. Now I don't know where I fit into this story anymore. I was speechless. This wasn't just about David coming back. This was about everything my mother had sacrificed, the pieces of her life she'd tried to forget, but couldn't. You should have told me, I said, my voice low, unsure of where my anger was coming from. I hadn't even fully processed everything, but somehow I felt betrayed by her silence. She looked up at me, her face softening. "I didn't want you to know. I thought it would be better for you to grow up without knowing what happened between him and me. It wasn't something I wanted you to carry. But now I carry it anyway, don't I?" The words slipped out before I could stop them. Her expression faltered, and she nodded. "Yes, and for that, I'm sorry. But you need to understand something. People make choices, they make mistakes, and sometimes they don't get a chance to fix them." Her words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of everything she had hidden from me, everything that I never asked about. But now there was no turning back. There was no easy way to untangle the mess of emotions, regrets, and what-ifs. Just then, the sound of a car pulling into the driveway broke the silence. My heart skipped a beat as I realized who it was. I stood up quickly, looking at my mother. Her face was a mix of dread and resignation. "I don't want to see him," she said, her voice firm, though it shook slightly. "Please, don't let him in." I paused for a moment, unsure of what to do. I could hear the car door slam, followed by the sound of footsteps approaching the front door. It was David. My pulse quickened, and I felt a tightness in my chest. My mother's words echoed in my mind. She didn't want to see him. But this was more than just a matter of avoiding confrontation. There were years of hurt, years of silence between them that couldn't just be erased. I glanced at her, and for the first time I saw a flicker of fear in her eyes. It wasn't just the fear of facing him. It was the fear of everything that had been buried in the past, everything she thought she had locked away, never to be touched again. I didn't know what to say. The truth was, I wasn't sure what I wanted to happen. Part of me wanted to throw open the door and demand answers. Another part of me wanted to shield my mother from whatever he had to say. She had suffered enough. Why did he think he had the right to just waltz back in after all these years? The sound of the doorbell made me flinch. My heart was racing now, and I felt like I was caught in some terrible tug-of-war. I walked toward the door slowly, my mind racing with conflicting thoughts. "Mom, stay in here," I said softly, though I wasn't sure if it would make any difference. She wasn't going to run from this. She had to face it, even if it hurt. I opened the door. There he was. David, the man who had once been my stepfather, the man who had broken my mother's heart and shattered everything they had built. Time had passed, but his presence felt as imposing as ever. He looked different. Older, of course, but there was something else. Something more worn down, as if the years had carved away at him. His face was gaunt, his hair graying at the temples, but his eyes were the same. They had once held so much promise, so much love for us, but now there was something else behind them. Guilt, regret, maybe a little of both. I didn't speak at first. I just stood there, staring at him, trying to process the shock of seeing him after so many years. He didn't know what to say either. The silence stretched on, thick with tension. "I know you probably don't want to see me," he said finally, his voice low and tentative. "But I need to talk to her. I owe her that much." The words stung more than I expected. Owed her? That's all he had to say? A few words after all these years? "I'm not sure that's up to me," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "But I'll ask." I turned around, glancing at my mother. She was still sitting at the table, staring out the window, lost in her thoughts. Her face was a mixture of exhaustion and sorrow, but there was something else there. Something that told me she was thinking about all of the years she had spent convincing herself that he was gone, that she had moved on. "You have to make a choice, Mom," I said, feeling the weight of the moment. "What do you want to do?" Her eyes met mine, and for a split second I saw the vulnerability she had been hiding. Then, with a deep sigh, she stood up. "Let him in," she said softly. The words were quiet but final. As I opened the door wide enough for David to step in, a flood of memories hit me all at once. I had forgotten how tall he was, how his presence seemed to fill up a room, how he could be both comforting and suffocating at the same time. I watched as he hesitated before stepping over the threshold, as if unsure of how to approach this new chapter, or perhaps unsure of how to face the woman he had once loved. He looked around the room, his eyes drifting to the photographs on the mantel, the ones of me and my mom, the ones of a happier time. We all fell silent for a few moments. The weight of the past seemed to hang heavily in the air, a barrier between us that no one knew how to break. "I didn't think you'd want to see me," David finally said, his voice trembling slightly, though he tried to mask it with an air of confidence. "But I needed to come. I couldn't live with myself, knowing I had caused so much pain and never tried to make things right." My mother, still standing by the window, said nothing for a long time. Her back was turned to both of us, her arms crossed as if protecting herself. There was a vulnerability in her posture that was unmistakable. She was just as unsure of what to do next as I was. "I thought you had left this behind," she said, her voice soft but tinged with bitterness. "I thought I was finally free of all this. But here you are, coming back like nothing ever happened." David looked down at the floor, his face clouded with shame. I know I left you. I walked away when you needed me the most. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I'm asking for a chance to talk, to explain myself." For the first time, I noticed the tears that glistened in his eyes. He was trying to keep it together, trying to act like he was in control, but I could see the cracks forming. This wasn't just about my mom. This wasn't even just about me. This was about him facing the consequences of his actions, the years of avoiding the truth, and now, in front of us, he had no choice but to confront everything he had done. "I'm not asking for your forgiveness, but I can't live with the regret anymore," he added, his voice almost breaking. It was strange to see him like this. The man who had once been so confident, so sure of himself, now appeared broken. I couldn't deny that a part of me felt sorry for him, but another part of me just couldn't understand how he could come back now, after everything that had happened. He had left us. He had left my mother when she needed him the most, and now he was standing here, wanting to talk, wanting to explain. It felt like too little, too late. My mom finally turned around to face him, her eyes narrowing as she assessed him, as if trying to read his intentions. "What do you want from me, David?" she asked, her tone colder now. "What could you possibly say that would make any difference?" David hesitated. The room was thick with tension. My mother's words hung in the air, a challenge, a demand for an explanation. "I don't know," David replied quietly, "but I need to try. Please." My mother didn't respond right away. She simply walked over to the couch and sat down, her face unreadable. I stood there, caught in the middle of a storm that had been brewing for years, unsure of how to navigate the chaos that was unfolding before me. The silence stretched on between the three of us, each lost in our own thoughts. My mind raced with 1,000 questions. What did David want from us? Could we ever rebuild what had been broken, or was this just another attempt to fix a shattered mirror that would never reflect the same image again? After what felt like an eternity, my mom finally spoke. Her voice was firm, yet there was a vulnerability in it that I had never heard before. "Why now, David?" she asked, her eyes piercing into his. "Why come back after all these years, after everything you put us through, after the lies, the secrets, the pain? What is it that you think you can fix now?" David looked at her with a mixture of regret and determination. "I know I can't change the past, but I need you to understand. I've been carrying this guilt for so long. I never meant to hurt you, but I did. And I've spent years regretting it. I've hurt so many people, and I've been trying to make sense of it all." His words hung heavy in the room, but I could see the sincerity in his eyes. This wasn't the same confident, self-assured man who had walked out on us years ago. This was a man who had been humbled by life, a man who had learned the hard way that actions have consequences. "Do you really think it's that simple?" my mom retorted, her voice rising. "You think a few words can fix everything? You think you can just walk back in and expect us to welcome you with open arms?" David flinched, but he didn't back down. No, I don't think it's that simple. But I'm asking for a chance. Just a chance to make things right. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I have to try. I can't live with the weight of what I've done anymore." I watched the two of them, the tension between them palpable. My mom's eyes softened slightly, but there was still a hardness to her expression. She was a woman who had been hurt, betrayed, and left to pick up the pieces on her own. And now, after all this time, here was the man who had abandoned her, asking for a chance to explain himself. For a moment, I wasn't sure what to think. Part of me wanted to forgive him. Part of me wanted to believe that he had changed, that he was genuinely sorry for what he had done. But another part of me couldn't forget the years of pain he had caused, the years we had spent without him. As I stood there, torn between these conflicting emotions, I realized that the decision wasn't mine to make. This was my mom's choice. She was the one who had been hurt the most, and she was the one who would have to decide whether or not she could open her heart to him again. My mom looked at him for a long time, her gaze unwavering. Finally, she spoke again, her voice quieter now, but no less resolute. "You have no idea how much damage you've done, David," she said softly. "But I can't pretend it doesn't matter. I can't pretend you haven't hurt me. Maybe I'll never forgive you, but that's something I have to work through on my own." David nodded slowly, as if he understood. The weight of her words seemed to settle on him, but he didn't argue. He knew he couldn't change the past, and he wasn't asking for forgiveness. He was asking for a chance to make amends. I watched as my mom stood up, her back straight, her eyes still filled with emotion, but her expression determined. "I don't know what the future holds, David," she said quietly, "but I can't promise you anything. You've already taken so much from me. Now it's time for you to show that you can give something back." David nodded again, his face filled with gratitude. "I understand," he said softly. "I'm not asking for anything more. Just a chance to prove that I can be the man you once believed I could be." The room was silent once more. The air between us felt thick with unspoken emotions, with years of pain and regret that had yet to be fully addressed. But for the first time in a long while, there was a sense of possibility, a sense that maybe, just maybe, we could begin to heal.